What's it going to be today?
Today, the big sign on the wall says tech debt.
You wrote a blog post about it.
I recently wrote a blog post about it, but I think more importantly, it's something that that I witnessed in my career so many times, and it was always the thing that someone approached me, or there was this vague feeling inside an organization: hey, we are too slow, something's off, we have bugs. And if you look closer, it's always, in most of the cases, it's tech debt, where someone tried to shortcut things, which worked brilliantly at the beginning, and then after some time, everything breaks down. And I think that's an important topic.
And I heard that probably we will also talk about books again.
We're going to talk about books, as always. We have many book recommendations for everyone, and we will do this, of course. Yes.
Let's kick it off.
Let's kick this off.
Hi, Raphael.
Marco.
We again.
It's this time of the day again. Yes.
Yay! Looking forward already.
Yeah, me too. So, what are we going to talk about today? What topic?
As we said in the intro, you wrote a interesting article about technical debt.
No way.
Yes, you did.
I did. Yeah.
I liked it.
That's true.
But I didn't understand it.
Of course. I also didn't understand it. It was totally written by ChatGPT. So we have to investigate what it says, actually. Both of us.
Let's look into it.
Let's look into this. So, tech debt is the big theme. And tech debt can kill your company. So this is how I phrased it. And I really mean it. So... And I've seen this multiple times when working with clients and also with companies. Companies start with software. They write software. They're eagerly trying to get product market fit. They prioritize features and front-end development and getting something out of the door over fixing issues in the back end, or creating tests, or getting the database schema correctly set up, which is not a big deal per se. So you, of course, if you don't write tests, your software won't break down immediately. If you don't have the perfect database schema, that's also fine, won't impact you. But what I was able to witness is that at some point, something strange happens, and that is the strange feeling inside the company that we are very slow for whatever reason. Yes. Deploying something becomes very painful. So, classic example is originally you deployed maybe multiple times a day. Then this becomes too error prone. So it's once a month, or it's once a week with QA cycles, then twice a month, and then only 1 month. And so if you have the ability to deploy only once a month, you have a problem, because then you are not agile anymore as a business. You cannot react to the market quickly enough, and that's a huge problem. And even if you only deploy once a month, you will still have bugs. You will still have to redeploy. You still have this very bad cycle between QA engineers and so on. And that's a huge problem. This is tech debt. And I think the reason is tech debt. So if your company is slow, one of the main reasons is tech debt. So what I think, and so tech debt is something that's for a business person is very, very abstract. So what's tech debt? I mean, of course, if you tell me that we can deploy faster without writing tests, then deploy faster and write the software faster, right? But as an engineer or as an engineering manager, your responsibility is to really highlight the downsides of accumulating tech debt. That's the important part. And for me, it's 4 areas. Again, coming back to the blog post, it's 4 things. First of all, you lose your ability to hire good engineers, which is not very obvious at the beginning. But if you don't maintain your frameworks, for instance, so if you have, let's say you have Angular and you have outdated Angular versions, if you want to hire new Angular engineers and you have to tell them, hey, we are using Angular, the totally outdated version with security flaws, in a state of 8 years ago, you likely won't get excitement in those candidates, right? So that's one of the problems. Another problem, which is especially for backend frameworks, but also for frontend frameworks, it's security. Security, of course, is always an afterthought, and as long as you don't have any security incidents, then everything is fine. But for you as a leader, as an engineering manager, as a tech lead, as a CTO, it's your responsibility to make sure that you don't have any security incidents, and you have to invest in this heavily, and you have to make sure that it doesn't happen as much as possible. It's a continuum, but one thing you don't want to have is outdated PHP versions running with outdated PHP frameworks, for instance, or outdated Java versions. I mean, Java had also many huge security issues with the logging frameworks recently. You don't want to have this. But if you have this in place, you have such a huge attack surface that this can kill your company, your reputation. If you have hackers that kind of get all the emails and send bogus emails out, and if it's about payments, it's even worse. So security is another thing. The delivery speed, that's something I mentioned at the beginning, it will fall off a cliff. So you are simply very, very slow, very buggy. Everything feels like a huge issue. And you also see this especially when you have to upgrade your framework. So I mentioned Angular at the beginning. If you have an outdated Angular version that's maybe as old as like 8 years, upgrading this 8-year-old Angular version, that's not just, I will upgrade this library. It's a huge amount of work.
It's
like
painful.
The whole framework will have changed. It will take maybe multiple months, and it's a huge thing.
Breaking changes.
Yeah, and that's also like a vicious cycle, because you know it's painful, you won't do it, it will be even more painful, then still painful, you won't do it, and then you will accumulate all these huge problems, not being able to hire top staff, security issues, slow delivery. It's a vicious cycle. And that's what tech debt is. And you have to be very, very vocal about this as a tech leader, and make sure that your teams don't accumulate so much tech debt, because it might ultimately kill the business, right? So that's my rough take on this. And so I mean, what is tech debt for you? How do you manage this?
Well, I think you mentioned already something interesting here that resonated immediately with me. Like, how do I explain tech debt to people that are not from the technology department? I think that's the most difficult thing for me. Like, a manager wouldn't tell a mason how to build a wall, or a carpenter on how to fit the door into the wall, and all of these things. But for some reason, there seems to be this possibility to tell software engineers on what part of their craftsmanship they should do and what not. Like, I don't know how often I heard them, don't write tests, or skip these tests, or don't do this we don't need to upgrade our libraries and all of these things. We can just continue with what we have because it works.
Yeah, but if you're talking about tests, I mean, tests, I kind of understand the manager or the product manager or whatever expecting not to write too many tests to make development faster, because you can write tests until the end of your life, and this won't benefit the business. So you have to have a good feeling how much it is worth testing and on what level.
Right.
So, and of course you can kind of gauge this in one direction or in the other.
Yeah, but my point is more towards the non-tech people are telling tech people on what's important and what's not important as part of their behaviors, their processes, and their craftsmanship. From my perspective, this is craftsmanship that we have. And when the same people would see their house that is being built and all of the experts and craftsmen working on this, they probably will not feel as comfortable in telling them, oh no, you don't need this plumbing, or no, you don't need this electrical line there. You can put it somewhere else. They wouldn't do that. So explaining the concept of technical debt to these people is one of the, let's say, key success factors in being able to make progress. I mean, you can also make progress by ignoring all of these people and just doing your own thing. And if it's your own company, then probably you will be successful. But if you are an employee and then you're going, like, people think that you go rogue because you're ignoring their requests or you're ignoring what they were asking of you, then there's a high chance that you won't be long inside the company. Rather, the difficult part is, how do you explain the concept of technical debt and the concept of interest and interest on interest? Like, this comes from the banking industry, and everyone understands how interests work and how debt work. But how does it actually relate to what we're doing in technology? That's, I think, a critical aspect of being successful as a manager or as a leader, and being able to make progress and make the environment and the system grow with the needs of the company.
And what would you recommend when, I mean, you can write software in different ways, and sometimes you just want to create a POC, you want to try out if this front end works. What of course then happens is that the front end will be in production forever. But if you just want to try out how this works, then you don't write too many tests, right?
Correct.
And how do you deal with those situations? Because then you end up with untested software in production. Would you then kind of demand, hey, my engineers need more time to kind of stabilize the development and add tests? Or would you just log this on a tech debt board and deal with it later? Or
so I will reply the way how you often reply to when I'm asking you a few things.
Right?
It depends.
As
it
always.
Depends. There's some context necessary. Let's set the context. When you are an early startup and you're trying to find product market fit, technical debt is not something that you care too much about, I would say. It depends on the product that you're building, but like, it needs to fulfill some minimal quality requirements so that the few customers that you have on your product can show you, yes, you are on the right track or not. Right, so a product where constantly your login fails, so people can't even access the value proposition that you're providing, that's a no-go. And you need to fix that, and you need to keep that fixed all the time. If you are an established company, you have your hundreds and thousands of customers already, then constantly delivering quality that is being expected from these hundreds of thousands of customers is a different aspect than if you are a startup and you have a few hundred or maybe just a few dozen. So that aspect is something that is influencing how I'm answering. So now I'm going into my answer mode. I'm assuming you already have an established product. I'm assuming that you already have a significant number of customers, and you are continuing to develop your product. In that case, I need to differentiate between what is it that we're trying to achieve here. Are we trying to build a proof of concept? Then there's a rule set behind or around this proof of concept process that allows people more flexibility, but it's also very clear this will not go to production. Or if it goes to production, it will be restricted to, 1% of the customers or 0.5% of the customers, so that we can gain the information that we want from the proof of concept. If this is, on the other hand, something that needs to go to production because it went through all the tests and it went through all of the processes that make us sure that help us understand that we're developing the product in the right direction, then it needs to fulfill a few requirements that we have. We call them something like, there's a concept of a definition of done, which is not to be mixed up with acceptance criteria, two different things. The definition of done is something that says, oh, we wrote the test that we need. Oh, it's running with the technologies that we have agreed on. So it also has a run book, so that the people that are on call in the middle of the night know what to do and how to do it. We have our logs where they belong to. We have the metrics, and so on and so on. It's all part of the definition of done. So I need to clarify first, before people start working on something, is it proof of concept and you can do whatever you want, like Wild West kind of approach, or is it going to production? Now, it's not always so easy and so clear, and we are here to support the business to be successful. So I don't feel that being dogmatic about these things is helping me and being successful and helping the company being successful. So if there's this gray area in between where, oh, this proof of concept went really well and we want to expand it, what do we do? So what normally happens is that there is a conversation ongoing, like how urgent is it? How much time do we have to make this? Like there's this very, very important customer that is really wanting to use this feature now that is a POC actually in production. And if we don't do this, we lose X amount of revenue. Our job as engineering is to support that. But it's a negotiation that then starts. And that is, okay, if we do this, then you have to promise, and we will get the capacity and the time to fix this at a later point. We will define the later point, and it will make us slower later. Because if we don't, then we have collected technical debt. We made a conscious decision to take a shortcut, to use a workaround, whatever. And now we need to pay the interest on this because it will make us slower for the next feature and the next feature and the next feature. It's like building balconies on balconies. There's a limit of balconies that you can build on each other.
True. Do you track your tech debt somewhere, or how much time you invest in certain areas? So building new products versus maintaining old ones, or do you track this? And do you see some kind of tendencies or some?
Yes. So there are metrics that I'm tracking. I'm starting very simple with DORA metrics. Coming from the book Accelerate, we like books.
Oh, yes,
we talk about books.
Accelerate, one of the main books everyone should read, I guess.
And there are some metrics that help me understand on how good we are with regards to our, let's say, deployment phase. Mm-hmm. But these metrics are a resulting metric of things that are also happening before. So for instance, I don't only look at the cycle time for a release. I actually look at the whole lead time that a certain feature takes from the development until the release. Yeah. So I expanded that metric for my teams. And then if I see that a certain threshold, something is taking more than 2 weeks, I have a metric where I can see a dot going higher and higher on the list. A colleague of mine says we have balloons that are ballooning up into the sky. Yeah. That's when we are able to look into and figure out what's going on, what's happening, why is this?
That's wonderful. And of course, if you have an organization, as I said at the beginning, that is only able to deploy once a month, you will see those bubbles quite a lot.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's good. Yeah, that's also why I like these Accelerate metrics. That's always what I keep on saying. Hey, we have to have the ability to deploy multiple times a day. And then everyone says, yeah, but we don't need to deploy multiple times a day, And the answer is, of course, no, we don't need to, but we have to have the ability, because if you have the ability, then everything is okay. But if you don't have this ability anymore, you will have problems like missing tests, missing automated tests, strange QA setup, buggy software, whatever. And we don't want to have the whole class of problems. We don't want to have that.
There's this saying, if it hurts, do it more often. So if it's so hurtful to deploy the software, then try to do it more often, because then the engineers, you hired very intelligent and smart and capable engineers, they will figure out a way on how to make it less painful. Because one of the main skills that an engineer has, at least I'm now looking at myself, is I'm lazy and I don't want to have this painful environment.
That's a leadership trait, not an engineering trait.
Oh, okay. I'll take it. I also seen engineers that are removing toil.
I'm just joking around, of course.
Yeah. So having metrics is one way how to look at technical debt. We also have something like architectural records, like decision records.
Yeah, that's nice.
We're using them whenever we're taking shortcuts. And they're owned by the CTO, so the CTO is overseeing them. Mm-hmm. I'm not the CTO, but I'm working very closely with the CTO on this. And therefore, this group of people that are taking care about our architecture and the way how the system is evolving, they are paying attention to these things. And at some point we make decisions. So for instance, we made a decision when we were moving from our monolith into a service-oriented architecture, microservice, etc. Like there was a decision by the CTO and me where we said like every change that goes into the monolith needs to be going through our desk because we don't want any changes in the monolith anymore. We want you to think about how we can expand this into this service-oriented architecture, which made it more painful for them. They had to move it, or they voluntarily moved into the different direction because they didn't want to wait for getting the okay from the SVP or from the CTO.
Yeah. So going back to the tickets or to the ticketing structure you're using, do you label the tickets in what area these tickets are, like removing tech debt, improving existing stuff, new stuff? Do you have an
Yes.
Do you have an oversight there?
Yes.
Do you use this?
We're using Jira like probably 80% of the rest of the engineering.
I thought everyone is using Jira differently.
Yeah, because like Jira is a jack of all trades, or you can also give it different names. We're using labels for this, and we're labeling each ticket. We also have a few, let's say, components that allow us, like the labels and components help us understand. And we also have ticket types. So we have like maintenance tickets, for instance, when we're updating or upgrading libraries because they got outdated. And there's a rule where I'm saying like I don't want any of our third-party libraries to be behind more than 3 minor versions, because I don't want to have this pain of like what you described, like having like an 8-year-old. I used to work in a company where we were still working with PHP, but it was like at times where I think PHP 5 was out and we still had code that was in PHP 3.
Okay.
And we had exactly those moments where engineers were like, we were in interviews and telling them this is what we had to do, and they were like,
yeah, we don't want to join your company.
I don't want that.
Yeah. So this like labeling of tickets, that's super interesting, and also an approach I'm using when I want to communicate what the engineering department is actually doing, and also get the buy-in from the management and to get the, let's say, the allowance to spend time fixing bugs. Because what we're using, in the end, you have to have some kind of investment framework which actually is related to capitalization, which is a different topic now. But the CFO will love this. But what I want to know when I'm looking at the department is how much of the work is dedicated to like new products, improving existing features, improving productivity, and keeping the lights on. And you should have a certain percentages what you spend on each area. So, and if you say that's, let's say, keeping the lights on, these are things like upgrading libraries, doing daily work business, such kind of things, fixing bugs. That's also keeping the lights on. But if this area where you maybe initially said this should be not more than 20% of our ticket volume or time we spend, is growing to 40-50%, then this tells you something. You see the graph like going up, more tech debt, people are fixing bugs, and then it's time to really improve this. And this is also a good graph that you can show to management. Okay, this is what we're having right now, and we have to invest in like reducing the keeping the lights on type of area and stuff and things we're doing there. So that's why you have another area which is improved productivity, and improved productivity would mean reducing keeping the lights on. That's a very simple investment framework that was, I think, a couple of years ago published by Dropbox. Dropbox is using this, and this is very, very helpful to actively manage tech debt, make it visible, and also reduce it later or at the spot.
Do you have a number in mind? You just said 20%. No, you said 20%.
Yeah, 20%. I think it depends. It depends on the company where you are, but being conscious about these numbers is, I think, the important part.
Yeah.
Because of course, most of the time of your engineers should be spent on creating new products and improving existing products, right? So product work. So this should be, I don't know, 60, 70%, and fixing bugs should not take most of your time. And but if fixing bugs becomes a huge amount of time or a huge block, then you have to act. You can make this visible, but if you don't know what the people are working on, you can't make this visible, so you have a hard time reducing tech debt. Vicious circle again. So making this visible important, and then also getting the message across the board or the C-level is then very easy. And it's also your duty as CTO or in a leadership position doing that.
I agree with you. So I'm using a similar concept where I'm giving a fixed number. I'm saying like 25% of the engineering capacity belongs to me.
You're doing this differently. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's similar because it's not that I'm like very rigid about it needs to be 25%. Like I'm tracking this on a monthly basis, but in the end of the year I want to see like roughly where did we end up, because like it's always a giving and taking, and sometimes we have maybe a few more bugs and therefore like we need to invest a little bit more, but sometimes product wants to deliver this one feature because of a deadline or because of a trade fair or whatever, and then it's totally fine that it gets reduced to like 15%. But I think the important part is we have to track it. We have to track it, and we need to get an understanding when is something healthy and acceptable, and when does it go to something that is unacceptable and unhealthy.
Yeah,
I would even say like if you are ending up into 40% or even higher, then you already are in an unhealthy mix.
That's true.
It's maybe then it's already too late.
Yeah, you have to change gears then, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you're using like 25% for 25% me time in terms of me, the SVP or the CTO time, this is basically what I would call then keeping the lights on time or improve productivity time of my department. So you would say this is like 25%, and the rest is then product improvement, product feature work.
Correct. And I would even put the bugs in there, because like bugs
that's also different for you.
Are not necessarily something that the technology department decided to put in there. Maybe they are a side effect on how the feature was designed to work, and maybe it's an edge case that we missed, or something. Like from my perspective, product work needs to contain the bugs that are dealt with, because in the end, someone needs to also make a decision what bug is worth fixing and what bug is not worth fixing. That should be a product manager doing that kind of decision, not the technology department.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would agree, to be honest. For me, it's I know what you mean. For me, it's helpful to see this and like budgeting this or
absolutely
bucketing this into keeping the lights on. Then you see it immediately. But you're right, because not every bug is made equal, right? So there are bugs and there are bugs. There are outages and there are bugs, and there are nice to have things like I want the color to be a little bit more lighter. That's a bug.
Right.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, maybe I should revisit that.
So I have the visibility on the bugs. I don't think that number of bugs is a good performance metric, by the way. But it's just like, for me, it's a metric. It's a metric. It's not a KPI or something like that. But it gives me a feeling on what's going on in our system. Still, the decision on which bugs are worked on and how many a team is taking into their system, into their development like flow, is completely up to them. Up to a point where I say like, okay, this is too much. We need to look at this differently. We need to approach it differently. That's when the interest rates are becoming too expensive. You said something else which I find intriguing, and that is, you said that it will be easy for the CTO to talk to the rest of the business. I have to say that this is, from my perspective, one of the most difficult conversations and the most difficult part in the managing technical debt. Because like, I know my jargon, I can talk to engineers all day, and I will mostly understand what they talk about, and they hopefully will also understand what I talk about. But that's not the same jargon that I can use when I'm talking to business people, when I'm talking to the CFO and explaining why things are becoming more expensive, when I'm talking to the CEO and telling them why things are as slow as they are. By the way, we're never fast enough, no matter how many people you have and how good your process is.
Mm-hmm. I'm always being told, please develop a little bit slower, that's too fast. I'm just joking.
I never heard that.
Yeah, I'm just talking about.
Good one. So from my perspective, a very important aspect of getting your point across on how to handle and how to manage technical debt is that you're speaking the right language, that you're using the words and maybe you're able to create examples like I just did in the very beginning, talking about building a house and telling someone how to.
That's wonderful.
And I think that's really hard. I'm pretty sure you have been in that situation.
Yeah. You have to do this totally. So always, like I always try to explain tech debt in terms of, hey, if you have a car, you of course can run the car without doing any maintenance, but it will show up, and at some point your car will break down. So, and we have to do the maintenance because we want to run the car for a long time.
Right? I like it.
So this is like one example, but you are totally right. What is sometimes very helpful is when, like the delivery speed, when you have problems. So if the CEO comes to you and says, you know what, we cannot upsell the product because it takes forever to kind of upgrade licenses and nobody knows how to improve the situation. It's like killing us. We are super slow. How does that happen? So if you have this feeling in the whole organization that something is strangely off, this will ease your job. Of course, if you're not responsible for this off thing, but if you have to improve an organization and have to support there, then it's always good if there is already some kind of urgency attached to the topic. So if people know, okay, there is something is not good, we have to change this. And then the discussion becomes easy. And if you have then good examples with the car, for instance, or so what you mentioned at the beginning, then this facilitates the discussion. And of course, and that's another thing, if it of course always helps if the CEO or if the C-level or if the board is kind of technical, right? So if you are the only technical person in the room, and everything else is about insurance and mathematics or business or whatever, e-commerce. It's yeah, I don't know. That is hard. But even the best e-commerce companies, let's say Shopify. I mean, Shopify is an e-commerce company, but Toby, so the CEO, for sure knows about tech debt and he knows when to fix this, and that's very, very important. So it always depends, but if you have good people also on the CEO level or the C-level on the board, this helps tremendously. Just a recommendation whom you should hire there. But yeah, think of Toby. Toby knows what's going on inside those organizations and in his organization, and he's a technical person, and that's very, very helpful.
And what if you don't?
Good examples, and yeah, that's your duty as CTO to really articulate the challenges and make sure that lay out a plan. If there's a challenge, lay out a plan how you can improve that. That is understandable to everyone else. That's not very technical. So communication is important, and the same applies as with security. So if you don't have any security issues, it either means you are lucky or you have enough security consciousness inside the organization that people just don't let security or prioritize security. So people prioritize security and they don't have any security issues. So either of the two is true. And with tech debt, it's the same. So if you're at the point where you have a security issue, it means something was wrong before. And if you have a problem where you have tech debt and tech debt becomes this item of discussion in the board level, then something went wrong way before. So it's the same thing with security. And you don't want to have tech debt as a discussion topic in the board level or with the CEO. And you don't want to have security as a discussion item there as well. And this means you have to deal with it up front. That's your duty as CTO.
Yeah.
If it becomes a problem, it actually means your job was not done properly, or you didn't do your job properly, likely.
I think there's a third option, and it reminds me on something that Martin Fowler, when you posted that blog article, I also had to look it up again, what Martin Fowler wrote about technical debt, because he created this 4-quadrant. I think you've seen that. What if you don't know that you have technical debt? Is that still technical debt? And why is it important to know if you have technical debt?
Did you already talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect? I think there was like one podcast we did a long time ago that where we talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, but this would be the Dunning-Kruger effect of tech debt, right? So
What's the effect?
yeah, you think you're writing awesome code, at the same time you are accumulating tech debt that will kill your company. Very simple. And you don't even know that you're accumulating. So you don't even know that you're even killing the company at that point in time.
So
But
the
you're doing
absence of you not knowing doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But this basically means you have to understand where and when your teams are cutting corners or accepting maybe subpar quality, and you need to actively manage that.
Yeah.
And looking at bugs and the number of bugs is one way how to do that. Tracking these things, these decisions in architectural decision records is another way on how to do that. Maybe there are other ways, and probably there are many other ways, but like the responsibility and the accountability for making yourself and your environment aware there is technical debt and where it is and what to do about it. What are the options that we have? That's a responsibility of the leadership.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a skill issue as well. So if you have also something I've witnessed, if you have like very junior teams or junior developers, they will just accept if a product manager says, hey, we need to go faster, please don't write any tests. Okay, we don't write any tests.
But that's not technical debt.
It will become technical debt at some point if development slows down and so on. But this is like the root cause of it.
Yeah.
And so if the workforce is very junior, it's not their fault, I guess. Just they can be overridden. They just think it's the normal way of working, and they just write the code the way they've been told. But then, of course, it's, as you've said, it's a failure of management. It's a failure of the CTO. Yeah. It's a failure of the whole organization. So it's a skill issue as well.
We don't talk about technical debt because we want to find the guilty person. I once heard that guilt is not investigated, but guilt is assigned, and you just did it. You assigned it by default to the leadership team because it's their accountability and their responsibility to figure this out. But they can delegate it, obviously, right? They can delegate, like, tell me where you see technical debt to the team. But in the end, making the decision on what to do with this and how to approach that is something that lies within the leadership. Technical leadership, organizational leadership, we talked about that also.
That's right. So if it's always the case, for instance, that the product or the CPO overrides what the CTO said, if the CTO said, we can't develop software like that, we have to have a minimum test coverage of, let's say, 60% or something, and then everyone else overrides the CTO or the teams say, please don't write any tests all the time. Yeah, you know where this leads towards. So this will generate tech debt and will kill the company potentially. But then it's also the fault of either, of course, the CTO, because the CTO accepted it, but also of the CPO and of the whole power structure inside the organization. Huge problem. I can't imagine Shopify doing this, but I've seen other companies doing that, and that's very, very painful. So if leadership doesn't understand the concept and, as you've said at the beginning, tries to do the job of the CTO, right? If the CPO tries to do the job of the CTO and know everything better, you will have a problem. It's a power structure.
Yeah.
And the CEO let that slip.
And it just makes me think that we should talk about at some point, maybe in a different episode on communication. Especially in technology, communicating is an art, because the language that we're using, the concepts that we have in mind, and it's very unique. I have a background in economics, also in addition, also some psychology, but also in computer science, which makes me feel more comfortable in let's say changing my language. I'm still speaking English, but I will speak the techie English and then the business English and whatnot.
Yeah.
And not everybody. I'm not saying that I'm that I'm doing this in a good way. This is for other people to judge. But I believe that technical depth highly depends also on how you're able to communicate on these things.
That's absolutely true. And I also think that at some point, if you are a consultant or if you want to become CTO, it makes sense to learn the language of the business what language does the CFO use, what language does the CEO use, what does HR use, and they use also their own language. And at some point in your career, you have to get a budget for something, and then you have to know how those budget discussions work, how labor is being calculated. And so I think it makes sense at some point to really do kind of an MBA or something where you acquire that knowledge, which is then big fun and will facilitate your communication skills and also your path in such an organization. That's the MBA part. I think economics and having like a business background or economics background is very, very important if you want to succeed in this area. It facilitates it. You can also do it yourself. It's like not very complicated, but yeah, a comprehensive way would be getting an MBA.
I don't have it, but
you don't need it, of course. Okay, so let's wrap up, I guess. So main takeaways, tech debt. What are the main takeaways? Main takeaways would be something like it will kill your company. That's my takeaway, because you cannot hire people.
You can read it up.
Yeah, you cannot hire anyone anymore. Hiring becomes super hard. Security issues pile up, which can also kill your company in isolation. Upgrading your software is painful, and development speed goes down, painfully down. So that's what tech debt means for me. And like, I would just shout to everyone, please don't accumulate tech debt. Please don't, in most of the cases. Sometimes it's okay, but like in most of the cases,
don't accumulate, which is my takeaway. Like, it's something that we have to negotiate, and it's something that we have to track. And I think there's a limit. There's a limit. And who is defining the limit? You as the technical leader, or your technical leadership group. You are defining this together, and you need to keep track of this.
Yeah.
It's a giving and taking. I've not seen a single company so far in my career that doesn't have somewhere some technical debt, and it's okay. But if you accumulate it, like you are describing, then it has the potential to kill your company. 100% agree.
Yes, and if you use this investment framework that we just briefly discussed, your CFO will love you because he can then capitalize the costs, and you can use the same framework to really measure how much time goes into keeping the lights on, into bug-like kind of work. And if this goes out of control, you can steer it into the right direction again and make this visible, also board level, for everyone else.
Right.
And last but not least, communication is important.
Perfect.
Just telling the CEO that there is tech debt, nobody will listen to you.
Right.
So phrase this differently. Cool.
Cool.
Thanks, Marco.
That was great. Thank you for the conversation.